What's up, everybody? This is Noa Dalzell coming at you live from Arlington, Texas, where I just finished covering a Connecticut Sun game that the Connecticut Sun were playing against the Dallas Wings. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Again, if you don't know me, my name is Noa Dalzell, and I cover the Celtics for Celtics blog and for CLNS Media. And this is the first time that I'm doing an episode after the Celtics have lost a game. And so we started this at the beginning of the finals. Obviously, this was, the plan was to go until the Celtics won the championship, and that remains to be the plan. And so this is going to be an opportunity to answer questions from yesterday. And I hope, I see I'm freezing up a little bit. I hope my Wi-Fi is good enough here. I'm sitting in the press room. And so you can see there's nobody else here yet. The game ended a couple hours ago. And so, today's an opportunity to share a little bit about yesterday's game 4, now that the dust has settled. And then also talk about what's coming up, because I'm seeing a lot of doomist takes, a lot of people freaking out, a lot of people panicking about the state of the Celtics and what's to come. And are they going to be the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-0 lead? So we can talk about all of that. And thank you, Jamie, for the sound and video check. You never know. And so, I was at American Airlines Center last night for game 4. I was not expecting the Celtics to lose by 40. I was not expecting for them to come out as flat as they did. Don't think anybody was. That being said, this is a part of basketball, I think, and a part of expectations and all the hype and excitement is that sometimes things don't go exactly as you expect them. And so a lot of people flew in from all over the world to watch this game, right? I met a lot of those fans. A lot of people spoke about how they expected the Celtics to win on the road. You're making plans for a parade. You have to do all that because you have to be ready to go in case you do win. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to win 4 consecutive games, and it's really hard to win 11 consecutive games, which is what the Celtics would have won. I don't know. I think it would have been one of the first times in NBA history for a team to sweep the conference finals and the finals if they had been able to win last night. So certainly, history could have been made, but at the end of the day, this is one of those things that, this is not about point differentials or records. They just want to win the championship, right? And it's really, really hard to be that consistent for that long. And last night was a dud. I don't think you throw it away. I think you have to learn from it, obviously. But I don't think that the Mavs figured something out that the Celtics can't control, or the Celtics, are not going to be able to respond to. And I thought most of it was energy and effort. And I know that sounds kind of weird to say because it's the finals and how could you not come out and play hard? But I don't think it's that they didn't want to play hard. I think sometimes playing hard is a skill set, and it's a rhythm, and it's a confidence that you gain. For the same reason that sometimes someone might have 15 rebounds, and other times they might have 4 rebounds. It's not that they were necessarily lazy at the game that they had 4 rebounds. Sometimes it's just things aren't going your way and you're getting frustrated and you're slow to the ball and all that. So I thought across the board, nobody really had it yesterday. Not Jason Tatum, not Jaylen Brown, not Drew Holiday or Derek White. The bench didn't have it. So, it made it hard that there was nobody to kind of bail them out. And that's what really stood out to me, is that fact. And just looking at the box score here, the only Celtic player that shot above 50% from the field was Sam Hauser. And that he was 5 for 7 in 20 minutes, 14 points. Second leading scorer on the team after Tatum, who was 4 for 10 for 15 points. Tatum and Brown, Tatum was a minus 33 on the night. Brown was a minus 28. No player had more than 5 rebounds. So there's so many bad stats to look at from this game. The thing that I wrote about for Celtics blog, which is what I thought was the most striking, was the rebounding differential. Celtics grabbed 31 rebounds. Mavs grabbed 52. So that is pretty wild, that differential, right? And so that to me is going to be something that they obviously can't afford. They can't afford for Derek Lively to control the tempo of the game the way that he did yesterday. I thought that it wasn't about anything Luka or Kyrie did yesterday. It was about all the other guys. And that has been my thing from the beginning of the series, is that if you limit the other guys, you'll be in good shape. And if you don't, then you won't be in good shape. And I think in this case, they were not in good shape because of the fact that they allowed the role players to get comfortable. They didn't defend, and they rebounded enormously. And Derek Lively had 6 offensive rebounds. And that, Mavs had 16 second chance points. Celtics had 2. So it was just, they outplayed them in every sense. And so I personally don't think that it's a time to kind of indict this team or to panic. They won 10 games in a row. They had been really consistent and they dropped one on the road. The expectation should never be a sweep in the finals. Obviously, I think people would be feeling a little bit different about it if it was like an 8-point loss or a 10-point loss or not what we saw. But I actually think from a morale standpoint, it sometimes even helps that it was like that because the game was out of reach so much that you just want to start fresh and you're not going to be reliving like I had a game winner on the line. Um, I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you're scrutinizing the last couple plays, obviously. And in a sense, that takes some of the pressure off. And Tatum talked about that post game that at the end of the day, a game where you lose by 2 or you lose by 30, it doesn't matter. It counts as a loss. So that was his perspective. I thought the general sentiment in the press room was very confident and calm. People were not panicking. They didn't seem overly down. Something that stood out to me is that Jaylen Brown is usually the one that calls the team out after losses. He normally says like it's disappointing, it's unacceptable, things like that. And that was not at all his energy last night. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was a decision that he made. They almost seemed to me like they all game planned before they went out on the court, out in the press room, and decided how they were going to communicate with the media. And they were all going to praise Dallas and praise the Mavericks' performance, and at the same time not be too down on themselves because it was a very consistent messaging. Everybody said Dallas played great, Dallas was awesome, more so than they said we sucked. And I think Derek White was the one that was like the most. He called it unacceptable. He said they out hustled us. He was the one that was kind of the most clear in indicting the Celtics effort. I think most of the players actually did not. And so those are kind of my initial takes. I'm actually have quite a bit of time now because my flight got delayed and I'm in Arlington, Texas. Just covered this Connecticut Sun game. Connecticut Sun won, so that was fun. And then I'm going to be heading to the airport shortly to fly back home to Boston. And then tomorrow we have a media day at TD Garden. So we'll be hearing from all the players, all the coaches, same deal that we've had as usual. So if there's someone in particular that you're curious about or a question that would be really helpful to get answered, I can try to ask that question, especially like some of the players that are not on the podium. They're just kind of walking around. It's the one time that you can grab them. So in any case, no parade this week, no parade just yet, no championship celebration. Instead, we have a game 5 on Monday night at TD Garden. And then we'll go from there. We'll see if the Celtics are able to pull that one off. And then, then none of this will have mattered. Game 4 will be a blip. I think that they're going to win game 5. I never had them sweeping the series. I never had them winning both in Dallas. I thought that they were going to split the 2 games in Dallas. I had Celtics in 6 originally. So I'm not panicking about this outcome. I don't think that anybody should be. And I think the Celtics I'm already seeing a lot of stuff about like, this is the Celtics that we know. This is, their choke artists, all this stuff. They lost 1 game. So again, just 1 loss. They had a couple of these during the regular season where they just had duds. You hope it's not in the finals, but they really haven't had many games like this during this playoff run. So I expect that they'll bounce back. To me, perhaps the most concerning thing is that I don't know that we're going to see Porzingis in this series. Just considering the fact that he wasn't available game 3, game 4. Missoula said he's available, but only for very specific circumstances. And I don't know what that means. We were trying to gather. People asked him about hit. Do you mean like if there's 1 play left in the 4th quarter and you need a brim protector, or is it like what I was picturing, which was if they're about to win the championship, they want Porzingis to be able to step onto the court and like play for a sec. So I don't know which of those outcomes is what he was picturing. In either sense, I don't foresee that he was a part of the real, he wasn't really available yesterday. And I have no reason to think that's going to change because from what I understand about this injury, it's not one that like all of a sudden one day you're doing great. The day before that, you're really struggling. So I think it's just to keep him available, to keep the Mavs. Yeah, keep the Mavs guessing. Exactly. So going to start scrolling through some of these questions. I can do probably like 25 minutes today, something like that, depending on how many questions we have. And then I will wrap up. And so, and let me just see 1 second. Someone's coming. No, that's okay. Okay. I'm going to continue here. Just had to double check that the room that I'm in is okay for me to stay in. So, okay, so just looking at these questions here. Okay, I see Kate is asking, what if the Celtics figured out the Mavs? I don't think that that's the case. Um, I think obviously staying in the paint is going to be a critical part of this team's success, and the Mavs completely outplayed the Celtics in as far as paint points yesterday as it went. But I didn't see anything that to me felt like they cracked the Celtics. I actually thought it was more the Celtics doing. Honestly, that's not what they said, but I rewatched the game. That was my interpretation of it, at least. Question here about, do you think having one day off affected the vets? I don't think so. I don't think that it was that. Al is the one guy that I think struggles more when he only has one day off. And honestly, in this situation, like Al was, let's see what the stat line was. He just took one shot, 23 minutes, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, minus 18. Like I don't think he was the reason that they were in this position. I thought it was actually more the guard play and Jalen and Jason. And yeah, they've been well rested. This to me didn't feel like they ran out of steam. If anything, Dallas is in a position where they're more running out of steam. And so yeah, I don't think that the day off had much to do with it, honestly. Um, Question here about Brissett/Cornette, even for a couple minutes. So the thing with the rebounding is that I don't think that the Celtics are incapable of rebounding without those guys. Like they have not struggled rebounding for most of this playoff run. I will agree with MK though that I feel like in nights like last night when you're really struggling to get energy, and they clearly were, like everybody was flat. A guy like Brissett in particular, and I think I tweeted this during the game, he's someone that is just his role is playing with a lot of energy, right? So there's not really a huge downside in having him just check in for a couple of minutes and just see if he can give you that burst. He had a couple of games during the regular season where he played that role, and I think it's highly impactful when he's able to do that. And so for me, O'Shea Brissett is somebody that is not as offensively more limited. Same with Luke Cornett. You're losing certain things, the spacing, but I think it's a kind of rolling the dice type of thing. And I trust Joe's rotations, but I did feel that way last night, that it would have been nice to see him come in for a couple of minutes earlier on to see if anybody could kind of light that fire under them, because they were really lacking it. It was really, they needed someone to kind of help get them going. I see Jake here saying game 4 was an anomaly. I agree. I don't think that we've seen this be a trend. And the other thing that I'll say about the Celtics is that they really haven't had stretches of game where they're losing significant, they're kind of losing a significant amount of games at a time. They never lost more than 2 games in a row. So for them to lose 4 games in a row, which is what they would need to lose in order to lose this championship, it would be a extraordinary thing to happen. I think everybody's thinking about 2016 a little bit, because that was also a historically dominant regular season team when the Warriors lost to the Cavs. And I think people are thinking about it because Kyrie Irving obviously was on that team. So I think that's maybe where some of the anxiety is coming from as it relates to this team, and kind of this feeling around like they're going to blow this lead. Because in reality, like when you're up 3-0 and you lose one game, like you shouldn't immediately start panicking about losing the series. And I don't think they're panicking, but I do think from what I've seen from fans online, people are a little bit frantic. So, question about the bigs Horford and Tillman have done so far in switches with in the series. So, I think in general they've actually done a really good job, both Al Horford and Xavier Tillman. And Tillman obviously in a more limited sample size, but they both actually held their own quite well. Tillman had got pick called for a foul on a 3-pointer. I thought that was a little bit of a weak call, but generally speaking, I didn't think that was the problem. And when you're the switching defense is something that the Celtics they're not selling out, right? So their whole thing this whole time has been that they're going to make sure that they are not going to double, they're not going to blitz, they're going to live with the fact that sometimes you have Horford on Luka, or you have Peyton Pritchard on Luka, or whatever it is, and maybe that's not the best mismatch, but it's better than what the alternatives might look like. So I think they're going to keep doing it. I didn't think that was the main problem last night. What I thought the main problem was the rebounding, and then the offensive stagnation that came as a result of the defense. And I think this is true for all basketball teams, but it's specifically very true for the Celtics. And that's that this is a team that's the defense and offense is so interconnected that when you're seeing the defense slip, like they lose all their offensive composure. And that's why, the defense is so important for them because they started to play against a set Dallas defense. Everybody kind of tried to go a little bit ISO. Jalen and Jason reverted back to kind of some old habits that we really haven't seen from them as much. So to me, I think that's kind of the priority. But I don't think the switching defense that Horford and Tillman have been participating in has been kind of the main challenge. Let's see. Someone here said Lively saying they figured out the Celtics. Lively said a lot of things during the series. I don't know him like personally, and I haven't covered him extensively beyond just like this round. And so I don't know what his intentions are when he says stuff like that, or if he's just speaking off the cuff, or if that's been his persona previously. He was talking about the crowd not being good in Boston, and after game one, he was talking a lot about how he was going to be physical with Porzingis, and they know what they're going to do. They've solved him. I guess they did because he never came back, but um, I don't make much out of those things. I also feel like nobody needs bulletin board material right now. Like nobody's going to be motivated because Derek Lively said something. I will say I do think the Celtics have really avoided saying anything controversial. Like Jaylen Brown was asked the other night about Luka and about him not playing defense or something like that, but he just didn't lean in at all. He said he's a great player and would not say anything like that. Um, so yeah, I don't really give much fodder to that stuff, but I'm trying to find somebody asked a question about, yeah, this is an earlier one, but someone asked about Jalen avoiding the first question from Gary. If you didn't see, Gary Washburn is one of the beat writers for the Celtics. He's one of the top beat writers. He's a columnist of the Boston Globe, and he asks a lot of hard-hitting questions. And yesterday, first question of the night, he asked Jalen about why did you guys play so poorly in a game where you had the chance to win the championship? And Jalen kind of laughed. He made kind of like a weird face. You can find the clip. I posted it on Twitter. You can find on Noa Dalzell NBA. And he then said, I don't even know how to answer that. Next question. And there's two, I talked about this with some of the other reporters. I think there's two reasons why he may have said that. The first being that he genuinely didn't have an answer. I think Jalen is not someone who's ever at a loss for words. He knows exactly what he wants to say and how he wants to say it. And so he genuinely might not have known how he wanted to phrase that and was kind of stuck and then just said like next question. But more likely, I think he didn't necessarily love going up to the podium. And then the first thing that he was asked was, why'd you guys play badly, basically? And I think it's a fair question. And usually the answer would be interesting. But I can see from his vantage point, it's like they just won 10 games in a row and they've been playing well and like obviously they played bad, you know what I mean? So maybe it was just a frustration thing, but it was kind of an interesting clip to him. He just like really didn't have anything to say, and then he just skipped it and then moved forward. Okay, I'm gonna try to catch up here so I can see these more in live time. Okay, so someone here's asking about the cheapest tickets are $17.50. What are your thoughts on that? So it's pretty nuts. What sucks is that you're going to lose a lot of the diehard fans that were there during the regular season and a lot of the diehard fans that were super engaged during the regular season. And you would love to see them at a finals closeout game 5, potentially, right? And in reality, $17.50 is pretty much unaffordable to like almost all regular people, unless someone has been saving up for this for a long time or is willing to make this like their big spend of the decade, or it's an exorbitant amount, right? So I get it, because if you're a Boston sports fan and you have that kind of money, this is your opportunity to watch potentially the Celtics win the championship. It's also kind of a risky investment because if they lose, I'm sure people will be really angry, and also that kind of creates like a little bit of a hostile crowd. I was at Game 7 last year of the Eastern Conference Finals, and I felt like the crowd was so excited about the potential of them making history, making the finals off of a 3-0 comeback, that they almost like started getting mad at the team by the second quarter when things weren't going well, and they were saying like, why are you guys, like, we spent all this money here, like why do you guys playing bad? And so I think it just cultivates this like entitlement and this anxiety because of the people know how much money they spent to be in the building. And so I wish there was a way to like cap ticket prices so that this couldn't be a dynamic, because I think that it hurts the average fan and it also hurts the Celtics, because you have like fans that are like even more on edge sitting there because they know that they're in this position of like why they're either going to win the championship or they're going to be in a pretty tough spot going back to Dallas, with all the momentum in the Mavericks' favor. Someone here wrote about Jrue Holiday's turnovers. So yeah, Jrue was at the podium yesterday. He was probably the most like solemn at the podium. He was just kind of like serious and was clearly disappointed by the team's performance and his own. And he brought up his turnovers unprovoked. He said, I got to be better taking care of the ball. And this was what I mean, but I said like last night, I think had a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. Like for example, Drew Holiday having 5 turnovers. He had not had a turnover in the first 3 games of the finals, and he's been a great decision maker through this playoff run. But there were so many passes that were thrown. Like they didn't have a crazy amount of turnovers. They finished with 13, and like someone like Jaylen Brown only had 2. But I can distinctly remember like one play that Jaylen Brown had where he just like literally passed the other team that has been so out of character for how he's played. Some of the fouling on 3-point plays, fouling on threes, they were in the bonus. It felt like the whole game. So I think it was just uncharacteristic. I don't think that it was something that Dallas did on Drew that made him have those 5 turnovers, but it was clearly something that he walked away from. Really, yeah, really kind of like he was pretty upset about it. Coincidence of June 17th. So yeah, this was an interesting one. So 2008 was they won in June 17th. Game 5 will also be June 17th. So, and then obviously the 617 area code. So people were talking about this last night. I think a lot of people are like, oh, maybe they just wanted to win at home. No, they absolutely like wanted to close it out last night. But I do think that there wasn't like the same amount of pressure last night that there will be next game. And this team does play well under pressure. That's the truth. Like that has been a consistent theme all year and for the last couple years. And they've been historically good in the clutch as well. So I do think that if it would be pretty neat if they won the championship on the anniversary of their most recent championship. But I think it's just a coincidence. I don't think it had anything to do with what happened last night. But I did hear people talking about it just like around the arena because there were so many Celtics fans at the American Airlines Center. Like it was actually wild how many Celtics fans there were. Just considering the fact that you're in Dallas and they were expensive tickets and people were just flying from all over the place. Um, so question here about why doesn't Joe go 7-man deep? A couple of reasons. I think first of all, Tatum has struggled historically a bit at the 5. I think it wears on him a little bit, and you also are thinking about a series in the long term, right? One of the things that happened last night was that nobody really played significant minutes. Luka and Kyrie played in the 30s. Derek White played 30, but other than that, nobody else did. I mean, Tatum and Brown each played 27 minutes. So I think you have fresh legs. You're probably going to see them pull out all the stops in game 4 because they're going to want to do everything they can to close this out. But I didn't feel like Tillman was a liability in either of these games. So I don't think that that's what like one of my takeaways personally. That being said, I do think he's going to keep rotations tight in game 5, even more so than he has during this final series. Um, Okay, so comment here about the blowouts. Yeah, I mean, 2017 Warriors got blown out after being up 3-0, right? So there's been plenty of blowouts over the years in these critical moments. 2022 Warriors, 2021 Bucks. A blowout, like they haven't been blown out many times. And again, it just counts as one loss. So I don't think that as long as they come out and respond and start game 5 strong, I think you can not worry about this one. Obviously, if they came out again and got blown out again, we'd have to have a different conversation. But I think there's a lot of extrapolations from a singular blowout when this team has won 10 in a row prior to that game, right? Okay. And then, yeah, comment here about just how hard it is to close out the NBA Finals. Like, there's a reason only 9 teams in NBA history have swept the NBA Finals. Like 9. Think about that, right? Not only are we talking about only one team wins every year, but of all of those teams, 9 have swept. And so this expectation that the Celtics had to sweep, I think is just, is misguided. And of the teams that were up 3-0, all of them won, but 5 out of the 14 that had a 3-0 lead lost game 5. So it's not unusual. 5 out of the 14, more than a third lost game 5. It's really hard to win that closeout game. Again, they all ended up winning the series, but that's the case. That's why the gentleman sweep term was invented, right? Because it's effectively, if you come back and win game 5, then you're still in the same, you effectively just lost that game 4, right? And I think a gentleman sweep has to be, you lose game 4. It can't be like it was 1-1 and then you won 4 in a row. So like the first 2 rounds, I didn't think were gentleman sweeps, even though they were Celtics in 5. So, okay. Have I bumped into Pierce? I have not bumped into him at games. I've seen him at the Auerbach Center. They're filming like documentaries and things, like a bunch of stuff for the Celtics team. So If they win, I think they'll win, but there'll be a lot of footage and new things to watch. But yeah, Pierce was obviously a game 2. I would guess he's going to be at game 5 in particular because they have the chance to win the championship, right? And so I think he'll be there. I'm sure they'll show him on the Jumbotron quite a bit. In game 2, they showed like the 2008 like hype up video with Paul Pierce, so like a younger version of Paul Pierce on the big Jumbotron, and that was super cool. And yeah, it was just, I think he'll be continue to be engaged through this run. I'm curious if anybody who else will be there in game 5, like which other former Celtics. This would be the game, right? So if any former Celtics want to come on to watch the team win the championship, this is their opportunity to do so. I mean, the next opportunity would be a game 7, and I think that would be a much higher pressure situation. So we'll see. Okay. Someone here said Kyrie's gonna have the game of his life in Boston. It would be a crazy story. I mean, he's lost 11 in a row at TD Garden. He talked pretty openly this week in media availability that this is something that has been kind of like he didn't use the word demon, but like it's clear to him that this is like a mental hurdle that he has yet to overcome. And so, it would be pretty fitting for him if he was able to come in game 5 and actually pull this off and have a big game. But I don't really have any reason to think that would happen just because he continues to struggle at TD Garden. And he referenced experiencing like PTSD from the incident years ago when he got a bottle thrown at him. I think that when he is in that building, he doesn't feel great. He doesn't feel like himself. So I don't think that he's going to have the game of his life just because we're not really seeing things pointing towards that. But certainly if he did, it would really change the complexion of this series, especially because he's a huge part of their team. He hasn't had an exceptional series in general. And then obviously the Celtics don't have Porzingis right now. We can assume that they probably will continue to not have him. So okay. Question about where we stay. So in TD Garden, there's kind of two options. There's like the tier 1 reporters that have like more access and are usually more senior, especially for the finals. A lot of like national reporters that you might know like that are kind of famous. And then they're like in a loge area that's kind of diagonal to the court. So you have a little bit of a weird view, but you're very much in the crowd. And then the rest of the reporters sit up high and it's kind of like in the like a balcony kind of press row. But it's TV views. So you're sitting like at center court. You can see the benches. You can see the game like perfectly. So that's where I sit. I actually prefer those seats. I've sat in the other ones a couple of times this year when there were less media members. And I just find that the angle is kind of tough. It's hard to take videos. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I like taking videos and posting like clips in real time of things that are happening on the bench, et cetera. And you just can't really do it from that angle. But it is cool because you can feel the crowd a little bit more because you're really, really in it. And you can sometimes hear people talking on the bench and things like that. So that's how it is at TD Garden. And then on the road, it's kind of a free for all. So every arena does it its own way. For Dallas, they didn't even have enough media spots. So they like turned a certain section of like the audience where they would normally have fans and they just turned that into a media section. So there was like not a lot of plugs. It was a little bit uncomfortable. I actually didn't even have like an allotted seat because SB Nation had 2 seats and there was 3 of us that were credentialed. So I sat in like a GQ seat. They didn't have anybody representing them. So yeah, it's one of those things where we don't all sit together. Normally I sit with the same people most games. But actually in Dallas, I sat with new people that I didn't even know because that was where I could find an open spot. Question here about Derrick Jones Jr. and Tatum. I don't know what happened. Nobody asked about it post game. I honestly totally forgot about it until this question. But there was a moment where Derrick Jones Jr. and Tatum were exchanging some words, and actually the moment stood out to me. I posted the clip on Twitter, but Jaylen Brown jumped right in the middle of it and started talking to Derrick Jones, and so I thought that was kind of a cool moment of like him having his back. Again, I don't know exactly what happened or why they got flustered or I think Derrick Jones got called for a foul on. He fouled Tatum and Tatum said had some words for him. It didn't really escalate too much, so I'm not sure. I don't think that they need to play a bigger lineup. The double big lineup had its moments during the regular season, but again, I don't think you need to do anything drastic from this game. And maybe Joe's watching it and he's actually like in total disagreement and he's going to come back in game 4 and do something completely different, or game 5 and do something completely different. Al Horford did something kind of interesting post game. He said normally during a series, like you're adjusting constantly. And then one team adjusts, the other one responds. And in this case, this was the first time the Celtics are going to have to make a big adjustment because they've been winning. Obviously, they're up 3-0, right? So maybe they do counter with something substantive. Again, I don't think so though. Question here about Peyton Pritchard. He obviously has had a really tough time shooting. At one point, he was 1 for 17 from the field for the finals, and the one that he hit was that buzzer beating, kind of like off the backboard 3-point shot. Last night, he ended up finding a little bit of rhythm towards the end there. Finished with 11 points on 5 of 14 shooting. But yeah, missed easy ones. I thought he struggled offensively, struggled defensively a bit. A couple of the rebounds that the Celtics missed, he was somewhat responsible for. He was struggling to grab over a big or something like that. So thought he had a rough night. Usually he's someone you can count on for energy, for a spark plug. I didn't think he really provided that last night, and that's always, those are the guys you want to be consistent and to have those minutes or opportunities with. So, we'll see. I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic that he'll be able to bounce back. I do think that it's good that he got some of that, like end of game blowout minutes run, because hopefully some of that will that some of that rhythm that he established will be helpful moving forward. And in the same vein, you saw guys like Dante Exum and Tim Hardaway Jr. who also caught a rhythm, and you hope that doesn't carry over. So that's part of the thing, the danger with these role players gaining their confidence, is that now you have Tim Hardaway Jr. had 5 3-pointers in the fourth quarter. Like, does that carry over to game 5? Who knows? A question about the officiating. I did think that Tatum got a pretty bad whistle early on, and he was getting frustrated. And I'll just say, I think in general, Tatum does have not the best whistle, as far as like he gets hit all the time driving to the basket, and he doesn't get the same kinds of calls that like someone like Luka or SGA or others do. I also think that there's things that he does that make the call less likely to come. Like, he sometimes kind of fades away from the basket as he's driving, and so that doesn't really lend itself to a whistle being blown. And then I also think that he does push off quite a bit with his forearm. So it's one of those things where, like, he doesn't get a lot of calls, but I also think that he gets away with some offensive fouls. That being said, he got super frustrated, and I think when he is frustrated towards the refs, it has a negative impact on the team across the board, and it hurts him and his performance. He picked up some frustration fouls where, after he didn't get called, he didn't get the call that he wanted, so then he fouled whoever got the rebound. Not what you want to see out of him. And I think he's a guy that struggles with complaining to the officials throughout his career, throughout the season. Certainly, I think it's something that if you watch a lot of Celtics basketball, that. Jaylen Brown was asked about officiating and his relationship with refs this week, and he said, "I don't even know their names. I really don't talk to them very often." He's not as much of a complainer. I think Porzingis, for example, was. So people have kind of their own relationships with refereeing, and I think that when Tatum reviews this game, he'll probably realize that he spent a lot of it complaining, and that probably was detrimental and down the road to their ability to compete at a high level and stay focused on the task at hand. And it's ironic because Sam Hazard gave reporters his favorite Joe Mazzulla quote this week, and he said, "There's no such thing as fouls in war. You either die or you don't." So I'm sure Joe will be repeating that mantra quite a bit. So I guess, long-winded answer, I did think the officiating was a little bit uneven, but it was more the response to the officiating that played a big factor rather than the officiating itself. Okay. Gonna do like 2 more minutes. Gonna scroll through here. So, question about the lack of adversity in the Celtics' road to the finals. I don't think there's been a lack of adversity, because when we're talking about these main group of guys, they've been through literally every scenario. Like, they've been down on the road, they've been up, they've been in the finals before. You're talking about they were down 3-0, came back from that. They also know what it's like to be in that position. So I think that's helpful as far as watching another team try to get there. So I don't think that the lack of adversity, quote unquote, in this playoff run is much of a factor. I also think that they did have a lot of close games and challenges, and they're also playing without one of their best players. So that's some adversity in and of itself. Question about the documentary. So All In is a documentary series by the Celtics media team that's been coming out by episodes throughout the year. So there's already been like 3 or 4 episodes that have been released, and so they're awesome, super worth checking out. I also think that there's a separate documentary that's in the works. There might be a couple of things if they win the championship. So there's more coming for sure, but there are a couple episodes that are already released. Okay. Uh, Best part of my job is getting to be in arenas for NBA Finals games for free and getting paid for it, honestly. I love watching basketball. I have loved watching the Celtics play. I love being around the NBA, and so honestly, just being able to be in the building is just awesome. And then obviously, like I love writing and I like talking to people and meeting cool people. That's I think maybe that's been the other best part. Is just a lot of meeting people in the media space and just kind of it's a whole new world almost. So that's been super cool. But I guess most challenging is writing during the game or writing after games. Like by the time the game ends, you're so tired and you just want to go to sleep, and then you have to write an article. And especially if it was a close game, or you have to wait for all the quotes by the time the pressers all in. So that's the part I'm not great at writing during the games because I'm like posting stuff, and also because I don't know to write yet because we're still watching kind of the story unfold in front of us. Um, okay, I'm gonna wrap up in a second. Confidence level, I'm pretty confident. I think they're gonna get this done on Monday in game 5, and I also think that if they don't get it done on Monday, they get it done in game 6. I will be less confident if they lose game 5, though. I think this is a really, really important game because the momentum swings if they lose this one. And then favorite player growing up, I've answered this before, but it was Rondo. I also loved watching Ray Allen, probably those 2. Then that was like my childhood, and then in high school was more Steph Curry. I loved watching him play just as a three-point shooter. And then yeah, super excited to go back to TD Garden. I wasn't ready for the season to be over. When we left after game 2, I was thinking to myself, like, is this really it? I don't know. And it wasn't. So we'll be back. I'm glad we have more media coverage, more stuff coming your way. And I do think a championship celebration at home would be pretty sick. So we'll see. Um, okay, I am going to close, but please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Noa Dalzell NBA, live from the NBA Finals with Noa Dalzell. If you're watching this on Twitter, if you're watching this on CLNS, please go ahead and do that. And also feel free to message me if you have questions that I missed. I'm happy to answer them after the fact. I'll be going live tomorrow, probably around the same time after media day. So we'll be hearing from a million coaches, players tomorrow. I'm sure there will be lots going on, lots discussed, lots of new quotes to break down. So I'll go live tomorrow from TD Garden, flying back tonight. We'll be at the Garden tomorrow morning for some more media coverage. They're off today. It's a travel day. And then I'll go live again on Monday, pregame, ahead of game 5, maybe the last time. We'll see. I thought it was the last time yesterday, and now we have 2 more lives. So, yeah, really appreciate it. Please subscribe. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you can do that. I post a million live updates. It's Noa Dalzell NBA. And then check out CLNS Media for all your post-game pressers. They upload all the pressers. So if you ever feel like you're missing something or you want to just watch like the entirety of something, you can go ahead and do that. So closing out, thanks everybody. I'm going to head to the airport. Appreciate your time. And please, yeah, subscribe and check out our live tomorrow. Have a good one.